All right, Zevon, are you German?
Yeah, it's actually Zevon, like seven with a Z, but my parents just wanted to spell it in a really confusing way and make everyone I ever meet who's over the age of 40 ask if I'm named after Warren Zevon. That's what they were going for, I think.
Oh, okay. I don't even know who Warren Zevon is.
Yeah, you ever heard that song Werewolves of London? Like, ah woo.
No,
No, nothing.
no.
How old are you, dude?
I turned 21 this June.
Well, that would explain it. That would explain it. His most famous album came out in probably like I don't know, 1980.
Oh, how old are you?
I am 40.
40. Okay, so wow. So you went to school in you went to high school in like the 90s then, like early
Yeah, dude, I'm
90s.
class of 1999. Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
then I took it to,
pretty good time to go to high school. Golden age of hip hop.
yeah, yeah. And also, before everything was on the internet and on everybody's phone cameras, so when you did something really stupid, it could be a rumor.
The digital footprint
It's
is a curse, man.
Yeah, dude, no doubt. No doubt. And then I took a year off between high school and college, and I lived in India for a year as an exchange student. And then I went to college, so that graduating year is a year later than it would have been otherwise.
Ah, where were you born?
I was born in San Francisco, but I should have been born in Arcata up in Humboldt County in the heart of the Emerald Triangle, which is the area we're talking about on my podcast, Kinda Murdery, right now. But I was born 2 months premature, so the hospital didn't have the necessary facilities to keep me alive. So I was flown down to San Francisco and born in San Francisco, but spent the first 18 years of my life growing up in Humboldt.
Where's that?
So Humboldt County is about 6 hours north of San Francisco on the 101, about 2 hours south of the Oregon border. The region of the Emerald Triangle is Humboldt, Trinity, and Mendocino counties, and they produce 60% of the marijuana in the United States every year.
Oh, that's
Um,
very cool.
yeah, it was even cooler back when weed was illegal. Um,
Yeah. Now that it's
you know,
illegal, it's kind of boring to smoke weed.
Right, right. I mean, it's not as
Yeah.
fun as it used to be, right?
Yeah.
And
Then I
it's a
switched to like
huge,
crack.
yeah. I mean, I figured that out in about 2001, but some people aren't as quick as me.
Oh,
No, just kidding. No, I mean it's a major economic engine up there, right? And the reality of the economy. I mean, it's not the only economic engine. There's timber, there's fishing, there's dairy, but pretty much if you wanted to make over minimum wage, you have to have had your job for 20 years or be a doctor or a lawyer or something. So whenever you saw a guy in his 20s or early 30s buying a new truck, buying a new Dodge Ram or going out to a fancy restaurant, odds are he's a pot farmer. And then when everything got legalized, the wholesale price of weed just cratered. Um,
wow.
and it's been a really tough thing for the region I'm from because all of a sudden it used to be you could be basically an uneducated farmer making an upper middle class to wealthy living, and now that is not really an option. I mean, wholesale prices went from something like $2,500 a pound to you're lucky to get $300 to $500 a pound, which is how you're
Wow.
selling it at that level. So that's crushing, as you can imagine. But I grew up an hour from the nearest town, off the power grid, all wood heating, wood cooking, solar and water power. So I was literally chopping a box of wood to build the fire in the late 1800s style cast iron wood cook stove every night. Um, Living basically on the side of a mountain with all dirt and gravel roads and everything, which was awesome in a lot of ways, but also tough for me because of my premature birth that I mentioned when you asked where I was born. I was born with cerebral palsy, mostly affected my left side of my left leg, so I used to really gimp around like Quasimodo, but then I had my first reconstructive surgery at 7. Then I had my whole leg rebuilt at 12 and again at 17. So I walk. I kind of look like I might have took a bullet in the hip at some point, but I walk pretty normally. But it was tough because way out there in the woods and in the mountains, so many things are sort of leg and strength and balance related. So that wasn't always the easiest. Took me a long time to learn to ride a bike, that's for sure.
So you had a limp like an old school pimp.
That's right. Still do have an old school pimp limp.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It happens. It happens, and
The last
if you
time I
know,
heard
it's a
about
little bit. Oh, good.
the last time I heard about someone living in the woods like that was the Ted Kaczynski documentary.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm no Unabomber, so
Uh,
don't,
yeah,
let's not
I
put the
couldn't
wrong
pass
idea out there.
I couldn't pass the introductory chemistry to save my life, so I'm safe from that too.
Nice, nice. What about you, dude? Tell me a little bit about you.
So I was born in Virginia, about like 15 minutes from the Pentagon,
All
and
right.
I grew up. I spent up to like, well, I spent like the toddler, like preschool years in Azerbaijan and Georgia, and then I did first and second grade in Arlington, and then I
And
did
oh, go ahead. When
uh,
you say
uh,
Georgia, do you mean over by Russia, or do you mean where Atlanta is?
Georgia Tbilisi, yeah, by Russia.
Got it.
And then grades 3 to 5 was Uzbekistan, and then grades 6 to 8 was Hyderabad, and then India,
Wow.
and then back to Uzbekistan to finish high school.
Wow. That's must have been really mind expanding at a young age. I lived in Allahabad, India, in Uttar Pradesh, where the Sangam is, where the Ganges and the Yamuna and then the mythical Saraswati River
Oh
all
yeah, I know that
commingle, and they
area.
have the Kumbh. I'm sure you do. I'm thinking perhaps some of our listeners, or your listeners, I should say, don't. They have the Kumbh Mela there, the giant ass festival, right? It was an awesome place to be, but it's very different than the United States. That's for sure. Very different than 15 minutes from the Pentagon. I bet India. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, every place is so different but so similar.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still had cornflakes for breakfast when I was living in India.
You didn't like the traditional Indian breakfast?
I do actually, but very often, unless it was the weekend, my host families just sort of ate a quicker sort of Western breakfast. I think to get out the door. But then we'd have giant traditional lunches at like 1 p.m. after school got out, and of course
Uh,
dinner at like 10 p.m. Um, but so
what
yeah, I mean, go ahead.
what brought you to India?
Well, I wanted to be an exchange student, and the Rotary Club does exchanges where one Rotary district will hook up with another district in another country, and then they send students back and forth, and you have to interview and get selected to do the program. And I thought I wanted to go to Italy. Um,
Oh,
and then they picked me and they said, look, we're picking you one way or the other. If you really want to go to Italy, we'll send you to Italy. It's your call. But our district has never done an exchange with India before, and we think you would be a good candidate for that. Are you game to go to India instead? At that point in my life, I was like 18 years old. When I thought of India, growing up in the middle of the woods in Northern California, I just thought of basically Mother Teresa in the slums of Calcutta. Like I didn't really know anything about it, right? And so at first I was like, "Whoa, do they both start with I? I mean, I understand that connection, but otherwise you're really throwing me a curveball here." But then it became like this, what are you, chicken McFly sort of moment, because I felt like I was being presented with just this really grand adventure opportunity where all of a sudden Italy or anywhere else, as awesome as they would be, no doubt, still much more rooted in Western traditions and just kind of seemed really tame by comparison. So once it was thrown at me, I felt like I had to do it. I've never been one to back down from a challenge.
Oh, that's dope. Yeah. How'd you end up enjoying India? I mean, as compared, like you would have gone to Italy, but you ended up in India. How'd you like India?
I loved it, and I also hated it. But I'm so glad that I went. Somebody, and I don't know whom, let's hope it's not Rudyard Kipling, famously said that whatever you can say about India, the opposite is also true. And that very much, and that's probably true of any place, but is blown into greater relief by how vibrant and India is. And I loved a lot about it. I mean, it's an amazing place. Some of the festivals, whether it's Holi or Deepavali or what have you, are just amazing to see. There's places that are to see that are mind blowing. Riding an elephant up to the Amber Fort, all kinds of stuff. And I came to love the food and I love the people. But then also it's really hard too. I mean, it was hard because of how far I was from my family and from things that were familiar, and also it's so different. I don't want to. It's almost hard to talk about it as like an American white guy because I don't want to make it sound like I'm making any negative qualitative judgments. But certainly we are very spoiled in America in terms of the reliability of overall quality of life, whether that's clean drinking water, power that doesn't go out at the height of the monsoon season, all kinds of things. I got very sick several times. Um, but for the most part, I had a great time and I lived with families that really treated me like I was a son in their family. And then I did lived with four different families for 3 months apiece. And at one point, I lived with a family the father was the general secretary of the Congress Party in UP. And UP is kind of like Texas in the sense that it's super politically powerful, but maybe not always the most culturally forward thinking of places relative to others in India.
Yeah.
But needless to say, this was a very important family in a giant mansion, etc. But they of the four families I was with, that was the only one who sort of hosted me like they were doing their political duty, where everybody was like super nice to me, certainly super polite, but I felt just like a guest for 3 months as opposed to a family member. And so that was a lonelier time. In particular, like they would very often leave the house to go to some function. Like the entire family would just be gone and nobody would tell me. As were everywhere else, I was like, they treated me like I was their son, all the other families. So if they were going anywhere, I was going there too. Or if I wasn't, I certainly knew the deal. While I was at these people's place, I would wake up from an afternoon nap after, eating just a mound of rice and dal for lunch or something, and the whole house would be empty for the next 12 hours. I mean, there were servants around, but that's a whole other ball of wax. And then at one point, the water filtration system in the house broke, and decided not to tell me that, and they just told the servants to start boiling the water for me. But the servants drank out of the water hose when they wanted to, so that didn't seem like a high priority to them, or they didn't boil it for 10 minutes or whatever. But I got like so dreadfully, dreadfully sick. So things like that would be the downside, but on the upside was just how I mean, it's the most amazing, beautiful place I've ever been. Each of the states in India is more culturally distinct than the nations of Europe. So
Oh
I
yeah.
wouldn't trade the experience for the world. But there was some stuff that was a little bit harrowing for just a white kid from America. Another one was Hindus, speaking generally, which you should never do about a group of people, but they have much different beliefs about how to interact with animals, say, than Americans, even animals that are dangerous or hostile. Like, for example, there's a belief that cobras like guard your wealth. So if a cobra is in your house, you would never kill it because you would be striking a death blow at your own good fortune. But also having a live cobra in the house is pretty unsettling. A
Yeah.
wild cobra, I mean, not a snake charmer cobra. So I remember one time there was a cobra in the house, and it's like, well, we can't harm the cobra, so we all just have to like make sure to stay away from it until the specialized person comes to take it away. Another time, there are packs of wild dogs in the streets just in downtown. I don't know how, it's probably kind of hard to imagine, but at one point this particular dog took up residence in our front yard and basically decided that it was his sex palace area. So he laid out his piss perimeter, and he was super duper hostile to like any creature, including humans, that might step foot into the front yard. Well, every morning at 7 a.m. I got up, hopped on a bicycle, and rode my bike to school. So one morning, I did another senior year in high school at a private Catholic boys, called a college, but it was a high school. I walk out of the house and I walk down the steps, and this just giant, slavering, drooling, barking, mange covered, nasty ass street dog just bolts at me like he's gonna kill me. And I'm like, fuck, he's got rabies, he's got everything. I mean, he probably had an early progenitor of COVID if I'd known what that was. I mean, that's how
He's
it
got,
felt, right?
he's got
Uh
everything.
right. He's got it all. This guy's high on syphilis, he's seeing visions from God. But so I bolt back into the house and I go to get my host father, and I'm like, there is a wild, vicious dog in the front yard. And I'm afraid I'm going to get bitten and get rabies if I try to hop on my bike and go to school. So I don't know what I thought he would do exactly to deal with this issue, but what he chose to do was he got a 2x4, a long 2x4, probably 25, 30 feet long. And he walked out in front of the steps, and the dog came running at him like it was going to rip his nuts off and eat him for breakfast. And he started whacking the 2x4 on the ground in front of him, like back and forth, like right, left, left, like functionally creating this kind of 20-foot long perimeter that the dog couldn't get past for fear of getting smacked with the board. And so once the dog was at bay, he'd be like, all right, go, 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 jow, 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 jow. And I sprint to the bicycle, hop on the bicycle, and start pedaling for dear life. By the way, remember, this is the kid with cerebral palsy, too. I was not the best bicyclist, either from a balance standpoint or strength or speed or anything. And so I start pedaling for dear life. Well, as soon as the bike passes the perimeter of the board that he's whacking on the flagstones, which is basically immediately, and there's probably another 75 feet between the end of the 2x4 and the gate and the dog's piss perimeter, right?
Hmm.
So at that point, I'm pedaling as fast as I can, and this dog is makes a beeline straight for me and is essentially nipping at my ankles the entire time I'm pedaling out of the front yard, until I get across the, his urine fence, and then he peels off because I'm no longer violating his sovereign nation. Um, but that was like a cup of coffee and an Adderall every morning, right? And so again, making assumptions, I would have thought, okay, that happens once, and then the dog catcher comes, or God forbid, you had to deal with the dog in a more permanent way. But like I said, I mean, I thought it had rabies. It definitely had mange. This was not somebody's beloved pet. This was a wild animal. Well, the 2x4 sprint to the bike, jump on the bike, sprint for the end of the yard, and like hope to not get bit ritual, morning ritual, went on for about 2 straight weeks. That's just what we did every morning until finally that dog decided to move somewhere else.
Wow.
So the the ethos of live and let live when it comes to all of God's creatures, sort of regardless of their intentions towards you, was a very new one to me. I have a lot of compassion for people, for animals, and everybody, but once somebody crosses the line into becoming like a mortal enemy, compassion is not at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Were you the only exchange student at your school in India?
Yes, I was the only white guy. I was probably I might have been the only white person in town. I never saw another one. And when I say town, I think this is another thing that people might not fully understand. Allahabad was a city of about 2.5 to 3 million people when I was there in 1999. But in terms of the infrastructure, it would be more comparable to a city of say 75 to 100,000 people. So it's more like what I would call a town, but with the density of a major American city. And as far as I know, I was the only white person in the city, and it was pretty interesting because sometimes I'd be biking to school or whatever. I should mention, I'm very tall. I'm like 6'5" with shoes on, 6'4" in my bare feet. Um,
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
so
I'm
I'd,
6'2".
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think like if you're surprised to see a white guy, if he's a ginormous white guy, that probably is a multiplier, right?
Yeah, that's gotta
Because
have some like biblical meaning right there.
yeah, sometimes there'd be like a little kid. You're I'm sure you're familiar with like the caste system and the various economic situations in India. So it wouldn't be everybody I was living with was like more educated than me, wealthier than me, you know, upper middle class to upper class professional Indian families. So some of
Hmm.
these descriptors I don't want anyone to think applies to like the social circle I was moving in. But at the same time you have like the rickshaw valas who are making like, if they're lucky, uh, 50, 25 to 30 rupees a day when it was like I think 7 rupees to a buck. So then and they might just live on the side of the road. So those like children from that social sphere would see me. They might be on their own bike or walking along or whatever, and you would think that I was King Kong with platinum hair and a purple beret on. I mean, they would stop stock still in the road. Their jaws would drop like a cash register, and they would just stare at me like I was an exotic beast. Um, and usually I was like, well, yeah, whatever. Sometimes I would be like, I'm a person. I can see you because it's strange. And again, I'm sure non-white people in America have a version of this experience all the time. But I'm a white guy who'd always lived in America, so being observed in a way where there appears to be no assumption that you have any idea you're being observed is a very strange experience as a human being, right?
Yeah, and it's like a cultural thing too to just stare at people.
I can't speak to that one, but I
Oh
hear
yeah,
you.
but in India, people will just stare at you. Like it's just if you're wearing clothes that are different from like the usual garment, or especially if you're like a white dude or a black dude, like their minds
Yeah,
are fucking blown. They're like just watching you. It's like a
I,
National Geographic for them.
yeah. I was really taken aback by how invested in like skin tone so many Indian people are, especially upper class ones. Like, because I've always been attracted to all kinds of women, right? And so I would be over there and I'd be out with my teenage friends, and you'd see some just super beautiful girl who was very dark skinned, or a not at all like a pretty homely girl, but who was very light skinned. And my friends would every time think the dark skinned girl was gross and the light skinned girl was gorgeous. Like it was that stark. That was something that at the time really surprised me. Now I also don't know if anything that I'm saying now in 2022 is still true as it
No,
was in
what you're saying
1999.
is true. So the lightness thing is left over from like the British colonial era. And so
Right.
like they still think that fairer skin is like more beautiful, right? And it's still in Indian society today. Like they have like they'll advertise whitening cream on TV and stuff.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was just surprised to the degree to which fairer skin trumped bone structure. Like, you know,
Oh yeah,
because
skin is everything
sometimes
there.
the dark skinned girls might just be gorgeous, and the light skinned girl was just not. But they would be just so gaga over the light skinned girl. I was like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, I guess they have a lot. They have
Uh,
different values when it comes to that.
but I hate to. I made some wonderful friends. People were amazing. I I hate that it sounds like I'm bringing up a bunch of negative stuff or judgmental stuff. I just feel like when you're in a culture clash situation, for some reason those types of experiences stick in my memory more. Like they were the more sort of jarring things, I guess. But it would be totally inaccurate for me to like say or have anybody think that they were overall that type of thing was an extremely small percentage of the experience that I had. And they were the kindest people, and it was mostly the most beautiful place I've ever been. So that's my little disclaimer: is that nobody should think that because I'm bringing up this stuff that's all that's over there. It's just that those were the things that, as a literally teenager from the middle of rural USA, um, just knocked me for a loop the most, I guess.
I think it's a frame of mind thing, like a reference. Like you have the USA reference, because whenever I would move to a new country, I would initially not like it, and I would compare it to the old country, and I'd be like, "Oh, I wish I was back in the old country because this is so negative." But then,
Mm.
the longer you stay, the more you begin to like it, and then you repeat the
Hmm.
same process every time you move.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's true.
And the
Nobody
negative
would
stuff
know
is like
that better
more
than you.
interesting, like everyone, when you see like travel vloggers and stuff like that, they always highlight the super nice stuff, or like this is great and that's great, but it's always more interesting to hear about like the negative and jarring things, because that's also like part of an experience.
Right. Yeah. No, I got super into the culture while I was there. I mean, I would wear traditional Indian garb. I would go to the temples. I was very respectful. I did. I made a really conscious effort to do my best to live as though I were an Indian. I mean, as best somebody who's just a white American kid could do. I really tried to do that. Um, it's funny because somebody like me talking about experiences with prejudice, like the things that register on my radar probably seem like so pathetically minor compared to what people who deal with real prejudice deal with. I mean, I think it's important to sort of realize how brittle white people can be. I mean, people get all up in arms about like saying, I just read this article, San Diego State University wants to require that a statement be made about the indigenous tribe that the land of the university was built on, and that
Mhm.
statement be included in all the syllabi at the university. Now, of course, some people are making like a freedom of speech issue out of it, but mostly people are all up in arms just about like an acknowledgement that the university is built on indigenous land. So, like, the white threshold is like, wait, we have to say something nice about some non-white people? Oh, hell no!
I think it's a bit silly. I
It
think
is a
having
bit.
to acknowledge, because then everyone would have to acknowledge every bit of
I mean,
indigenous land, like because that happened so long ago.
I
You don't
no, no,
see like anyone else doing that.
I hear you in the sense that like I think a lot of these token gestures are counterproductive because all they actually do is soothe white guilt and allow people to trick their brains into thinking, okay, well that's handled. There's
Yeah,
something printed in a booklet. We're in a post-racial society now. Like it's stupid, and yet at the same time,
we did it,
getting
guys. We
really
ended racism.
right, getting really upset and sensitive. Exactly, getting really upset and sensitive about your rights being infringed upon when that right is like, oh, you might have to read a statement. I'm not saying the statements. You're right. The statement's a little silly, but it's also silly that people are just incensed that it might exist. Like,
Yeah,
um, so and where I'm going with this is at one point I was in Varanasi, which is the temple city that's not that far from Allahabad, and there was a belief, and forgive me if I'm saying things that you already know. Hopefully, our listeners don't. But there was a belief among the Maharajas in India that if you died on the banks of of Varanasi, on the banks of the Ganges in Varanasi, that you would be released from the karmic cycle. So what's super rad about this place is that there are literal castles, like mahals, from basically every region or state in India, dating, from like sort of 17, 1800s, I guess, 1800s. The whatever the architectural style of a Rajasthan, of a Gujarat, of a Uttar Pradesh, whatever. It's like castle, 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 all along the river because this is where all the kings would go to die. And they also have various temples that are in the styles of these different parts. So it's a really cool place to get like a concentrated shot of the of architectural and other culture for like the entire subcontinent in one relatively small city. But I remember I was wearing kurta pajamas and I had whatever I was supposed to have on my forehead, and
the
I was
bindi.
going into it. Yeah, but it was the red paint. I
Oh,
don't
okay,
recall the
yeah,
exact reason.
yeah. I forgot the
But
name
I
too.
was, yeah, I was going into a Shiv temple, and or I thought I was, and I got to the door, and there was a priest there that was just like, no, you're not coming in here. You're not a Hindu. And of course, I was I didn't go in, but I was like so upset and offended. Be thinking to myself like, religion is a belief. Like you don't know that I'm not a Hindu. I'm even wearing traditional garb here. How I'm living here. How dare you call me a looky loo? I mean, I didn't say any of that, but that I was just so appalled and like horrified and offended and upset, and after working through all these emotions for a while with my underdeveloped brain, I was like, oh wait, what this actually is just a extremely mild version of what people who aren't white face in America all the time, right? But for me, it was this big eye-opening moment of like that was just about. I mean, people used to make fun of me and beat me up and stuff for being handicapped. That's a sort of different kind of prejudice, though. So this was the first time that I had been just kind of, oh, your skin's white, you obviously don't belong here, or your skin's whatever color. This is the first time in my life by 19 that I had ever been treated like that, and it was so upsetting. And then, but now, with a little bit of perspective, you're going, gosh, I haven't had to put up with anything in my life as far as that goes compared to so many people. That was the
The
big
Board
kind
of
of aha
Education
moment.
versus Odelberg, huh?
Yeah, the priests of Shiva
The Priest of Shiva
versus
versus
Odelberg.
Odelberg. Yeah,
Oh man.
but I mean, well, I would argue that you had a better experience in India than you would have had in Italy. Because I feel like in Italy you would have kind of blended in with the people and stuff, and just generally had like an enjoyable time. But in India, I
Oh
feel like
yeah.
you learned a lot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. No, for sure. I agree 100%, and I think a big piece of it too. I mean, I learned a lot from India, but another piece of it really had nothing to do with India, which is as we grow, we get this idea. When I say we, I mean humans. We get this idea of who we are as people, but so much of that is what other people tell you you are, whether it's your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, kids at school, positive or negative. You get this whole sense of self that's very often constructed by others. Not entirely, but a big percentage of it can be constructed by other people. And so being in India, where I felt like, sure, there are plenty of things that are similar. There's a language, there's train systems, there's all kinds of stuff. People are always human beings, and we always are reacting to the same set of like hopes and fears, just in different ways, essentially. So I don't want to make it sound like it was so different, and yet it definitely was so different, and different enough that I felt like pieces of my constructed identity that were maybe not helpful and were put there by other people in my life were able to sort of fall away, and that I was able to learn who I was and what was truly me and what I could kind of keep and discard in a way that was super empowering, and I don't think could have really happened anywhere else, or at least not in Italy or anywhere else that was like remotely more similar to where I was coming from. I mean, the alien experience, if you will, of being in India by myself for a year allowed me to learn about a lot about myself, and that's something that I'll be very grateful for my entire life.
What do you think an interaction would be like between you before you went to India and then you after you went to India? If those were two separate people and they interacted, where do you think they would butt heads?
That is a great question, dude. You're good at this. Um, I got, I think I think that pre-Indian Zevon was, and I still am, very cerebral and very rational, um, or I like to think so. But in America and in a lot of the first world, certainly in America and in the family and the culture I was coming out of, we have this expectation of an addiction to control, meaning like I ought to be able to control every aspect of my life. Like I want to microwave this food in 3 minutes, and if my pizza comes more than a half an hour late, it's free. And how dare you do this? And this is the right side of the road and the left side of the road, and you expect to be able to sort of, like your Neo in the Matrix, kind of have a pretty good leash on and control of all the inputs and outputs in your life. And because of that, you think that all sorts of things are sort of objectively true, that are just seem objectively true because of how free of unwanted, not even unwanted's the wrong word, but pressures you can't control your daily experience is. And so I was very pre-Indian Zevon was very I almost want to say like haughty in that way. Like, where I'm going with this is that I think there's a high um, correlation between how much you feel like you're in control of your life on a daily basis, and how spiritual you are, or your likelihood to be an atheist, or your likelihood to think that science explains everything, or that everything comes down to math, or that you have a total understanding of the world and the universe.
Mm.
Um, and I feel like I was one of those people before I went to India, where I was like a kid who had excelled in school, and I was going to an Ivy League school, and I just was like, I was an arrogant 19-year-old, nothing bad can happen to me. I'm a master of the universe type. And like, I'm going to beat you down with logical arguments and tell you why you're wrong and all these kind of things. And I probably still am mostly kind of like that. But at least while I was in India, and for probably a year or two after I got back, and to the extent that I can still remember that it happened, kind of like a mushroom trip where you like meet God and understand the reason for being, and then when
I
you
never
come
got that
down, you
from a
go,
shroom trip. Not gonna lie.
oh man, got to get you
People
some better
always
shrooms.
people always talk about like how like they have some profound like new understanding of something after they do shrooms. I just
Mhm.
realized that rappers are regular people that just do regular people stuff, but like more expensive.
Yeah, but
That was my big revelation.
that is a big revelation if you unpack it. Not that we have to, but it is. That, I mean,
Oh yeah.
the understanding that all that you're what you're basically saying in a much more efficient way is that all of these material inputs that we're so addicted to and imbue with so much meaning are essentially meaningless. And at the end of the day, you still got to like get out of bed, take a dump, make the coffee, brush your teeth, put your pants on, be a human, and try to find a way to be happy. And that
Oh
is
yeah.
really true, right? It's 100% true. But so many people think to themselves, like, man, if I had a platinum album and I had all the girls and all the money and all the cars, I would be like this happy superhero. But you're not. So don't undervalue the realization you had, because it's like I said, it's almost like you just expressed the idea more effectively than I would in a roundabout way. Um, but it's a similar. I remember one that my realization was like, people always want to know the meaning of life, and I was like, we exist to be things of beauty and be beheld by the Lord or the universe, whatever you want to call it, and that in and of itself is enough of a reason to exist. And when I say things of beauty, I don't mean like handsome or beautiful people, or I mean all the darkness and the ugliness too. I mean beauty in like the most complete sense of the organic nature of existence, and that was actually the meaning of life, was just to live it and to be part of it. And when I was on the mushrooms, I was like, wow, I really got it. Like, this is actually the truth, and I know it now, and this is amazing. But then later, you don't feel it anymore, but you can still remember it, right? So
Oh,
that's kind of like what India was like for me, because it was my first real experience of. I remember being on a rickshaw, going down this big hill, and we were probably going 25, almost 30 miles an hour on a bicycle rickshaw, and there's just big ass trucks zooming past us with like inches to spare, and cars and donkey carts and an elephant, and like literally everything you could imagine being in the streets, and the whole and even and but it was still like a mostly dirt road, and the whole rickshaw's like shaking like crazy, and big old transport trucks are just zoom, 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 zoom. And I think to myself, like, I literally have zero control over whether I live or die right now. Um, and I just have to sort of believe that, que sera, what will be, and be okay with it. The old, like, there are no atheists in foxholes. Um, and so for me, I think the biggest change was that I became a more spiritual person and realized that the world was a whole lot bigger and more complex, and far more out of my control than I ever would have believed before I went to India. And I want to make it clear too that while that may sound like, once again, I'm just describing dangerous chaos, that realization for me was a profoundly positive one. Um, because it allowed me to not grip all the time and be okay, at least sometimes, barely, but sometimes, with things that I couldn't control or things that I didn't want to have happen. Or if not okay, at least be willing to let it happen without feeling like my world was breaking. Um, and understanding that relinquishing a little bit of control of your existence is healthy and freeing, and frankly necessary, because just like the idea that rappers with Lambos and ladies are superheroes who are stoked all the time, that's an illusion, right? And
yep.
so is the idea that we have total control over our lives. Um, it's an illusion that you get addicted to, and it makes you brittle, and when it gets shattered, you break. So I think I became a much more aware and resilient person because of India, and that I would have had big arguments to get back to answer your question with my previous self about whether there was any validity at all to anything I've just said. My previous self would have been like, no, 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 like science and evidence and math and this and that. And well, they just don't control these things because their government's fucked up because of this and that. Like I would have had all of these rational reasons that were the equivalent of a blind man grabbing an elephant's tail and thinking he was hanging onto a rope. You think you've got all the answers and you've explained everything, and all you're touching is a tiny piece of something like infinitely larger.
Yeah.
And but that can create a lot of strife, right? And so the fight between whether or not it was an elephant or a rope would have been the big fight that pre-India Zevon and post-India Zevon would have all the time.
Oh, yeah.
In answer to your question,
To touch on what you said about rappers being an illusion, I might be a little like conspiracy theory on this, but I think a lot of like what's portrayed in media is all an illusion. Like from what I understand, like even like really white teeth now are shown as like a sign of like health and stuff, but super white teeth didn't exist pre-Hollywood.
mm.
Hollywood created like the really, really artificially white smile. And then
Oh
like
yeah,
we're still being sold this strange like lifestyle by these people in like every form. You used to just have the Hollywood like up there like super rich, but then now it's like boiled all the way down to like Instagram influencers that and that all
yeah.
started because of Paris Hilton. She was it was all emulation, right? She was the original blueprint and she just did whatever she wanted because she was super rich and like had paparazzi and hung around famous people. And that's why she was famous. But then now
Right.
people are trying to be famous like
Right.
that to get
But
rich.
right. But then she's been replaced, right? She's Kim Kardashian now, and by
Yeah.
the way, massively replaced and massively upgraded, may I say? But
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
oh, I think Kim Kardashian is a lot smarter, more talented, better looking. I think she beats Paris Hilton out in like every way. I think
I think yeah, what she did, right, was is so cool what she did, like how she came up and everything. And also now
yeah,
she's like reaching with her lawyer thing, she's reaching into like politics too, which is really
yeah.
interesting.
And like people who think that the Kardashians are like vapid and stupid are
No,
not at all. They're
they're
smart
geniuses.
enough. They're smart enough to sell you their version of the American dream and get richer than God off of it. Like,
Oh
well, you
yeah.
lap it up and criticize them. Not you, but the person who does. But so yeah, no, you're right about the Paris Hilton thing, except that in a way she's also proof of my case, which is all that shit is not what makes you happy or content or gives value to life, because here you tag her with starting it all, and now that may not be fair, but also you just look at her arc, right? And she's already been used out essentially. Not to say she isn't rich and everything still, but nobody particularly cares what she's up to, right? She's been
Yeah.
replaced by the next uh iteration. And I
Yeah.
think that is the Hollywood is absolutely selling us a particular look and vibe and all of that stuff, but in a more sort of general sense, it's the whole idea that oh god, I don't
I
need
think
to drop these aren't really truth bombs is the thing. I mean, really what I'm saying is wherever you go, there you are. I mean, I know
yeah.
personally some really famous, successful people, and all that fame and success, if they were happy before all the fame and success, then they're still happy, and if they were miserable, then they're still miserable. It's just that's people
Yeah.
are people.
I grew up around like a lot of wealthy people wherever I was. And at the end of the day, the number one, like most important thing to all of them was like time with their family or like time with people they enjoy spending it with. So time, like, so I
Right.
guess, yeah, time and connection is like the
Hmm.
most important thing above all.
Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
because time really does equal money. And so very often if you're super wealthy, I mean, there's a whole other conversation about, legacies and trust funds and blah 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 blah. But often, if you're very wealthy or powerful, you know, the cost of maintaining that or building it is time.
Yeah,
So you everybody sacrifices something towards at whatever altar they choose, and if you're sacrificing time, the expense of that is very often your family and the people you love.
yeah. That I think that's very true. Yeah, yeah. That Hollywood thing, the selling us the thing. I think that really does feed into like a whole industry of consumption, right? Because they get you into how do I
Oh,
say
you
this? They sell you this whole idea of things you need to consume, right? And like a lifestyle you need to have these things to be like happy or whatever. And then you see that become so much more extreme now with how fast trends are changing. And now it's like it's stopped from just being clothes. Now it's like home decor trends because you want your whole life to be Instagrammable.
well, and how about this? I mean, it's no mistake in America that in God we trust is on the money, right? I mean,
Yeah.
our cash runs everything around us, and as an extension of what you're saying, look at crypto because I know this is much a doge about nothing. So originally and always, the idea behind money was that it's supposed to be as immutable as possible. Like the reason it has value and holds value is because there's some reliance. First of all money, including gold bars, is a scam everybody agrees on. Okay? Like if the apocalypse comes, the idea that I'm going to trade you my donkey cart, my shotgun, and my pig for your burlap sack full of gold bars, fuck no, I'm not. If society really breaks down, gold's going to be worthless too. So it's all to some degree, a scam. But always the idea was supposed to be that money was money because it was essentially immutable. Were going to know what it's worth. Um, and now, as you're saying, that we've become a culture where we're constantly selling people on the next trend, and it happens so fast. Look at crypto. I mean, the Bitcoin's like a store of value, sure, but the way that people are making so much money on crypto is they is by buying these crazy meme shit coins that everybody buys into for a second. It blows up. If you're smart, you cash out at the right time. If you don't, you're fucked. But like that is the fad, and but also what drives all the interest besides wealth. I mean, what makes it exciting and dynamic and almost soap opera like is is how quickly the trends hop. I have a buddy who there was some shit coin came out he made a bunch of money off of, and it was called pregnancy butt. I think like literally it was a coin called pregnancy butt, but he bought it and he sold it at the right time, and he made a lot of money.
What a
Uh
guy.
right, right. And I mean now of course it's worthless, you know, but actually, I don't know. It might not be worthless. I'm not a crypto expert. Please don't take any financial advice from me. But I think it echoes your larger point where something can become desirable no matter how fleeting just because it's the next thing. And people will buy into it just because it's the next thing. And I think because of how important money is to our society, and it's really like the bedrock of the social contract in some ways, the fact that this has also happened to money, something that used to be defined by its success was defined by how immobile and unchanging it was. You don't want the value of your if the value of your money changes every day, that's useless, right?
Yeah.
That's how it always was. Now the money that everybody cares about is the money that the value changes wildly hour to hour, and I think that that may be a reflection of all these trends that you're speaking to.
Yeah. I feel like everybody wants these things because everybody else wants these things.
Yeah,
Because
everybody wants
yeah,
everybody
like
wants the most they can possibly get for the least they can possibly do, in the words of singer-songwriter Todd Snyder.
they, I don't know who he is, but that's very
Yeah.
true. Yeah. People don't want to put in the work and they just want the a reward.
But then the people that they're trying to emulate do nothing but work. You know,
Yeah.
your Kardashians, your Elon Musks, your whoever everybody wants to be. Those people are putting in 18 to 20-hour days every day.
Oh yeah,
Like
especially with
that.
like lifestyle stuff like Kardashians, their entire life is their work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So they don't get to be themselves.
no, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
the big lie. The like the biggest part of the lie, I think, is people don't see the work that gets put in and think that it all just comes easy. Because she's just famous for being famous or whatever, and think that they can emulate it. Like, oh, anybody with a good face can be an actor, or if they've got a bad face, they could be a successful character actor. Like, no, the best actors I know worked on that constantly their entire lives and failed
Do,
for a long time, and then the whole like 10,000 hours to greatness, the Malcolm Gladwell thing or whatever. I don't know if that's the exact number or whatever, but it's really true. You don't get great at anything. You don't achieve anything if you don't put the work in. I mean, you can be
yeah.
born into magnificent wealth, sure, but those folks are very often not happy either because I think human beings can't be happy without struggle. It's the Western metaphor is once we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, the gates were barred, never to return. Cherubs with flaming swords at the gates. Well, people can't be happy if they don't have struggle, and if
Oh
you
yeah.
don't
Well,
have
definitely.
yeah, and if you don't have external struggle, you create your own internal struggle, whether it's drugs and alcohol or whatever. Like,
That's correct. Yeah, I had that
yeah,
same thought when I look at like people like because when I look at people here now, like I live like a fairly, I could say like middle class life now, and I compare it to like the people I knew abroad. People here now would want to live like they were, but the thing about people over there is that they had no struggle growing up. Like their frame of living, they need something to live for. And it's like when you're
yeah,
born into like a lot of wealth, then there's really nothing like nothing to show for yourself, or there's nothing like much to live for, quote unquote.
yeah.
So they end up because so and they end up like jumping into stuff like fashion or materialism just because it's like something for them to do. They don't know what else
Right,
to do.
right. Some way to mark. Sorry, some way to like mark height lines on the wall. Some way to track
Yeah.
what's happening. And I think that also explains. So often you'll have the story about some billionaire CEO guy who raided everybody's pension fund and stole billions of dollars more, right? And it wasn't necessarily because he was secretly bankrupt. He might have just been stealing the money. And the average person's reaction is always like, "Well, hold on. You had 500 million or a billion or 10 billion, and then you just ruined the lives of thousands of people by stealing another 10 billion. How much is enough?" Like,
It's
what
never
why do these
enough.
people right why do these people do this? And exactly, I think what happens is when you truly devote yourself to making money, like when it becomes your golden idol, you sacrifice everything at that altar. It's like the time thing we were talking.
Mm.
It's like you sacrifice your friends, your family, your professional relationship, the trust of people that you have to take advantage of. Like you literally burn all the meaningful parts of yourself at the altar to harvest the money. So once there's nothing left of you except for your pile of cash, then your only way to imbue any of your actions with meaning is to continue to watch the ticker go up. And that is why no matter how much they have, they're not worried about the human wreckage of generating that much more because that competition is the only meaning left.
Yeah, a way I heard it explained was people who become super rich and their goal is just make more money. It's like a game because like their entire mind comes towards a game and they're just trying to like get the next high score because that's like their high right there.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. And by the
Yeah.
way, it's just humans. Let's not act like it's a whole other breed of like evil people with damaged souls that turn into billionaires and become this
Oh
thing.
no. But when
It's
you're
it's
in
human nature.
the path of doing that, like Steve Jobs before um I think it's all conditioning and pressure. Because like
Yeah.
Steve Jobs before, I love Steve Jobs. When I was in like elementary, middle school, I read his biography like 10 times cover to cover. Huge fan.
Mm, mm,
He was like super he was very different earlier in his life than before Apple became big. He was like
mm-hmm.
super he even took a trip to India like you did. And he had like a lot of similar things that you were saying. He had like the very like the hippie outlook on life that they had in like the 70s or 80s or whatever. But when that pressure came on from like board members and stuff, his like mind just kind of went towards like it became less about the product itself and it became more about like the next high score because that's what
Yeah.
his life was basically dedicated to. He
Yeah.
neglected his like children and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
we want to paint some of these billionaires like hardworking saints, but like at the
No.
end of the day, they're sacrificing everything around them. Like
Yeah,
Kanye
they
is worth 10
absolutely.
billion. He's divorced. Elon Musk has gone through like four wives because they
Right.
just burn everything else because they're so 100% focused on their purpose. And I think
Right.
like that's kind of cool. Like you have like your
No, we
purpose and you're
need
focused
people
on it.
like that. We just may
Yeah,
not want to be them, or maybe we do, or we don't realize that that's the cost of being them.
yeah,
The big bait and switch is that we think that we can become Kanye or Elon, if you were a genius or whatever, without having that somehow we can be the ones that don't have to burn everything to our passion. And
yeah.
it's just human, and I think that's generally not the case. It's also the danger of when we start to require um, saintly morality from all of our artists and businessmen. And like, if you look at just about everybody who ever did something that is remembered in history, they were mostly frigging assholes that couldn't pass the cancel culture purity test of today. I think the larger point, as we were talking about sacrificing these parts of your life at the altar, is that very often the brightest fires cast the longest shadows. And that the
Yeah.
danger of today is that we are preemptively trying to scrub the shadows.
I don't like
Telling
that.
somebody, right, if you can't pass this ideological or action based or whatever it is purity test, then we have decided that it's impossible that you can contribute anything that we're allowed to benefit from. It
You know,
feels like that's the attitude at times, and that there's a real danger of for all of humanity in that, because sometimes progress is painful and dark and horrible, and sometimes people that do necessary and important things just were total shit shows in other parts of their lives. And
oh
we
yeah.
have
I
to
mean,
find a way to
think about
forgive
like
and
hundreds
harvest
of
what's
years into the
worthwhile.
future, they're going to look back at us and think that we were just as bad, like we were horrible people because everyone was using computers that used, materials mined by child slaves. And they're going to look at
Right.
us like we're horrible people.
Right. Well, and if you're a vegan these days, we already are perpetrating a Holocaust on pigs, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
Or how about the fact that Silicon Valley has intentionally built um, all of these technical devices, freemium games, and everything else that are creating dopamine hits that are essentially the same as doing cocaine, and then making their billions of dollars off of getting little children hooked on that. Like
yeah.
the scions of today have literally, like, the child's brain is feeling very little difference between the freemium iPad game that always gives them the reward they want and if they were actually doing a hard drug, and that's how Silicon Valley is making its billions. So I think, and that's something we're too in the middle of right now to have the perspective. But if you want to talk about future generations looking back in horror, how about generations of digital child addicts being what pads your bank account?
Yeah. I mean, I guess they're just really good crack dealers.
Yeah, yeah. I
Maybe
mean,
that's why
I know.
Jay-Z became so successful. He knew it was up from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
know big Silicon Valley execs that will not let their children touch all of the products that they're selling to the rest of our kids because they
Oh
know,
yeah.
because they did the studies and they know, like, yes, it's addictive, yes, it's releasing all these chemicals. You're basically, and that's why we're so fabulously wealthy. I
Yeah,
mean,
but it's so bad, but it makes a lot of money. Steve
right.
Jobs didn't even let his kids use an iPad.
So this is what cracks me up, like, about people that think if you get vaccinated for coronavirus, they're gonna like put like a government tracker in your balls or something. Like when I was a
They
kid and I
they
read I
already have
read
government trackers
right,
on us. Yeah,
right. When I
they're in our
read Brave,
pockets.
right, exactly. That's where I read
Yeah.
Brave New World. Yeah, exactly. They go out in the middle of the woods. There's a camera in the bird's eye, and I read that before iPhones, 1998. And I was like, man, if that ever happens, that's it. Like, I'm going to become like a crazy survivalist, secessionist weirdo because that will be the ultimate oppression. And what you already alluded to is no, not necessary because instead we pay $1,000 and then $200 a month for the privilege of keeping this tracker in our pockets, irradiating our nutsacks.
Hmm.
Um, and doing much more than geolocating us, tracking everything about us, every bit of our behavior, from the way we're aging to our probable health issues to the way that we shop to what kind of a perv we are. They know everything about us.
They know way
Um,
too
and,
much.
and we're paying them. We're paying them for it.
Yeah, that's the
So
craziest part.
it's right, and it's also insane to think that there's anything that the government could really build on top of that. It's like, you think they can't get their hands on that data when they need it? Of course they can. They don't need to put it in your vaccine, you know. And I'm not even saying get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated. I mean, I believe get vaccinated. Okay,
Yeah, I'm on board with that
I
too.
absolutely, but I don't want somebody to get mad at me about having a vaccine or not debate. I'm having a, if you think it's some kind of mind control, government infringement of freedom tracking device, Bill Gates plot, whatever kind of crazy shit that's on YouTube, uh, you're already paying for the right to do that to yourself, your family, and your children every day. And you're also electromagnetically radiating your freaking reproductive organs at the same time while you pay for the right to do all of that. So
And it's like you can't back out
get
either.
it together. Get it
Yeah,
together.
it's like impossible to back out at this point too. Or at least it'd be very difficult to back out because of all the apps and everything.
Well, and even somebody like me who like believes all this stuff, at a certain point you kind of can't back out because you're an asshole because of how much you inconvenience everyone else, because this is how human life works now. Like, I have
Yeah.
an uncle who I love very much who's in his mid 70s, and he never got a cell phone until a couple years ago. And he had all the virtuous reasons why. But at a certain point, it became like, okay, you're driving 7 hours to visit us, and in the like 12-hour window between when you get up to leave and when you do the drive and stop for your meals and everything else, like, we really have no idea when you're going to arrive. And by the way, he's famously a late starter, so even if he called you when he was leaving and said I'll be there at 6, he's probably going to get there at 10:30. It's just that guy. Wonderful guy.
Well,
But the point is,
he would have fit in very well in India.
right, right. Yeah, no, that is true. But so, like, meanwhile, you can't call him, so you're basically, it's like you're having a washing machine delivered. You got to like sit at home for like 12 to 15 hours because you got to be there when he arrives, and you're concerned about making sure he's going to be okay and all that stuff. And it's like, dude, if you could just text us, we could live our lives, and so could you. So that's part of it too. Is our existence has evolved to a point where if you're gonna be a total luddite, you're really just kind of putting the burden of all of your beliefs onto other people.
But it's also like there's a whole FOMO thing, and like we're so like I think that draws back to pre-India you, where you have to know everything, right? Like I
Right.
have to know when he's on the road. I have to know the exact time he's getting here. If he's 15 minutes from here.
Right,
And like
right.
people just want
Sure,
to
that is
know
true.
everything all the time. They just want like they want like
Yeah,
complete
no,
knowledge and control of the situation.
that is true. Although in this particular case, it would be more like, well, we think you're coming at 6, so we make dinner and wait because we're expecting you, and then you arrive at 10:30 or 11, and there was no way to let us know that would happen. So like, it's so there's a middle ground in there somewhere. But yes, you're
Yeah.
also correct.
I wonder what
Uh,
I wonder what that was like. Like you went to high school without phones, basically, right? You had no phones.
Yeah, and even beyond that, where I grew up in the middle of the woods, we had no power. We had solar and water power and a gas generator. And also, my parents were kind of like back to the land hippies, so I wasn't really allowed to watch TV or play video games for the most part. So,
Oh,
it was in the minds of many people today, I practically lived in a pre-technological time, and I actually was deprived even the technology that was available because of the belief system of my family. So it was very, I mean, it was very different. Outside of cars, we basically lived like it was the freaking 1800s. We were practically Amish. I mean, look, we had a TV. We went to the movies. It wasn't like we never did any of these things, but it was like there were basically 3 sitcoms a week that my parents liked. We would watch those 3 sitcoms. I was allowed to watch like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers after school. And then on the weekend, I had to choose whether I wanted to watch 3 cartoons or play my Nintendo for a half an hour. So that always felt like such an unfair fucking because I had to
mm.
choose between an hour and a half of cartoons or a half an hour of video games. And of course, I wanted to play video games, but I had such little screen time. It was like you kind of had to go quantity over quality most of the time. So I was always so
Mm.
fucking pissed about that. I was like, don't treat me like I'm an idiot. Like, give me a half an hour of each or an hour and a half of each, but don't make me make this fucking Sophie's Choice. You know what I mean? Uh, by the way, I sort of alluded to it at the top, but if anybody's listening to this and enjoying me bloviating or not, maybe it's making you furious, but if you feel engaged, I host a podcast called Kinda Murdery. We talk about historical kinda murdery stories, and when I say kinda murdery, sure, sometimes it's murder. It's often murder. Might be robbery. Might also be something just kind of weird and bizarre. Like to me, if you imagine a 4 foot tall carnival barker with a platinum grill and gold rings on every finger in a polka dot suit out in the Mojave Desert somewhere, some like uniquely kind of Guy Fieri Americana bizarrety. That is also kind of murdery. Um, and that's the kind of stuff we talk about. And I have guests on that are interesting people, and we go through these stories and we have fun with it. So it's kind of history, comedy, true crime. Strange bit of an odd mix. Uh, but we have a good time with it. And then on another day of the week, I release Kind of Murdery Insomniac, which is just a more straight up, dark, serious, no giggles, true crime stories.
Yeah.
That's my pod. So please check it out if you've enjoyed hearing me talk. Thanks for letting me get that plug in there, bro.
Oh, no problem. I'll leave links in the description to your podcast and your socials and stuff too.
Awesome. You
So
know.
after India, you
Hmm.
went to college, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where'd you go to university?
I went to Yale, um, where I did a double major in political science and theater, and I was my house junior and senior year was like the party house. We lived in this kick-ass lo- uh, we lived in this kick-ass high-ceilinged loft apartment at 31 High Street, appropriate name, and we would throw these just ragers every Thursday night and sometimes Thursdays and Saturdays. And
Wow.
so in my capacity as a social host, like that's how I met our mutual friend Machbud Mogadam from HellaDoge and Everpedia and Frax and fucking all the companies he started. Rap genius, dude's brilliant. But so yeah, we went to school together, and so had a great time in college. kind of feel bad for kids going today. It was the same thing you alluded to in high school, where like I didn't even have a cell phone until I was a sophomore in college. Okay, and then
Oh,
when I got a cell phone, I then got rid of it for a while because I had some real needy friends back in the day who would always be texting me or calling me being like, "Where are you? What are you doing? Want to hang out?" And I felt like I was just being tracked and having to like constantly account for my actions and whereabouts to like straight dudes who were acting like my bitchy girlfriends, who were like
yeah, it
wanted me
must
to
suck.
just yeah. So and this was the early days of cell phones, right? So it wasn't even, I can remember actually like talking to my buddies at the time, we're all like 19 or whatever, and saying something to the effect of like texting is for girls. Like we thought it wasn't macho to text and that, you know, girls text each other but we're dudes so we call. Like it was like
Oh,
it was that silly. It was like that much of like proto period of cell phones where I didn't even use the texting function because I thought it was effete,
it's
which
the
is
exact opposite now.
hilarious. Right.
Yeah, texting is the male thing to, and calling is the feminine thing to do.
Right. And you know what else? I mean, we could. That's a whole There's a whole rabbit hole we could go down about the ways in which cell phones and texting have enabled people treating other people like garbage. Um, but I'm not saying we have to go down that rabbit hole. Another one would be that's been very frustrating for me at times. Like, look, I I fully believe, of course. Here's something inflammatory that you have to when you have to say this out loud. Obviously, people are going to go, but that means you don't. Like, of course, I fully believe in gender equality and and that everybody should have the same opportunities and etc. But what I feel like I observe, my daughter's in fifth grade now, is that a generation that has grown up like really indoctrinated with the idea that there are no differences between boys and girls. Um, I am frustrated by the ways in which the little boys treat my daughter like crap. Like say things to her that they might say to another little boy, but that a little boy ought not to be saying to a little girl, in my opinion. And I can't
Yeah,
help but wonder if being raised with this, like they don't have. I hate to use the word chivalry because that can trap me into like somebody saying, "Well, the chivalrous code was really just encoded sexism, blah blah blah." That's not really what I mean. But like
but there was
when
the
I was
way
grow,
that men treated women and the way that they um interact with them that was different. Because when it's like a
look,
little boy and little boy, like they're like boys are
that's
rough.
right.
Yeah,
Right, exactly. Okay, like, look, I'm
yeah.
not that old. I was in middle school in the 90s. It's not like it was the 1790s, right?
Yeah, I
But
was
I
in middle
mean,
school in the early 2010s.
right. So I don't know what it was. Who knows? Maybe it was like this for your generation. But like when I was 12 years old, I would never have dreamed of like calling a girl that was my same age, like, whatever, the B word, stupid, ugly, fat, whatever, all of these like just gross adjectives. Um, it was like you called your male friends all that stuff, but
Yeah,
you'd never do it to a girl. And now it's just like par for the course. These little boys treat all the girls just like shit, like just exactly how they treat the little boys. And
yeah,
I can't help but wonder if something has been lost in the homogenization of the message that that men and women are the same. Like, of course, they're the same under the law, potential, all those things. I mean, we all understand that, but I feel like there can at times be something sacred in our differences that leads us to cherish each other in a way that I fear that we are losing. There are days when my daughter will come home from school and I know who all the kids are in her class because she talks about them all the time. And by the way, she's beautiful, she's talented, she's smart, she's popular. It's not like she's a social outcast troglodyte by any means. And not Not that anybody should be treated poorly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
She's not a lightning rod for getting picked on. And
Mm.
still she'll say something like, such and such a boy said this to me, and I'll be like, well, you tell that 10-year-old that your daddy's meeting him in the parking lot after school and I'm going to beat his ass. And she's always like, "Daddy." And I'm like, "Obviously I'm not serious, but I kind of am." And by the way, it's not like Deep South shotgun wedding thing. It's not like they're saying sexual stuff to her and I'm being like, "Oh, you better not have a boyfriend. I'll kill him." It's not. It's just more like deeply disrespectful, like "shut your effing mouth, you effing b," like
Yeah.
something like that. And I'm like,
I'm gonna join you at at this at being burned by the stake and say I don't agree with the way that gender equality is being presented to us. I feel
no,
like
I
there's
don't
like a
either.
yin and a yang. There's like,
Hmm.
there's the feminine energy, there's a masculine energy. And
Yeah,
when you bring that down, like obviously it gets more complicated when you're adults, but like when you're children, there's like a sense like of respect you have to give, of like the way
yeah,
that you speak and like what you would say and what you wouldn't say to a girl, as
yeah,
opposed to your male friends. Because it's a total like the two, even though they might both be your friends, there's a difference in the way you should treat them. I even notice
yeah.
myself, I'm like
Absolutely.
more different. Like I'm more softer when I'm with my female friends, and I'm more rougher than I'm with my male friends.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
you can't say "shut your effing mouth, you effing b" to a girl. Um, and then, by the way, my daughter's badass taekwondo, stronger than the boy. Like she could. The fucked up part is she could beat all their asses if she wanted to, and then they would go crying to the teacher, and she would get in trouble. And my attitude is like, you can't talk to a girl like that. You're lucky her grown ass father's not beating your ass. And
Yeah.
what happened where what you learned was that this was all okay. Meanwhile, we're in a culture where all kinds of other toxic language is policed to the point where you can't even make a joke.
Oh
And
yeah, I
yet
hate that.
all these little boys are growing up thinking that they can treat a girl the same way they treat um, a boy.
Yeah.
It's fucked up, man.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so
like
strange.
I would observe growing up in like an almost entirely white community full of lots of like hippies that the least racist people in the world, by their own declaration, tend not to live within 50 miles of someone of the other race.
Oh yeah. That's so true.
And what does that tell you? And when you live in the midst, we're in the midst of moving now, but for the last 14 years of my life, we've lived in basically downtown Los Angeles, like very inner city LA, in the midst of a wonderful cultural melting pot. I mean, I was so happy about it for my child growing up. She went to a black musical theater summer school. Her scout troop was in Little Japan with all Japanese kids. Her school was Chinese kids in Chinatown. She's Mandarin immersion. She's half Chinese American. My daughter, my wife is Chinese American, and her school was all Hispanic and Asian kids. And then obviously there's white people around. So
That's so cool that she has
she
that
was.
range.
Oh, and her Taekwondo school was El Salvadorian, like military style Taekwondo.
See
So she was,
that's so cool
yeah,
she has that range.
right. So it was awesome because she was engaging in a very like authentic daily way with people from all backgrounds, and so it wasn't even on her. It wasn't on her radar. I mean, you can never. Oh my God, am I going to trick myself? No, I'm not. But you get what I'm saying. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
this like when I was growing up. I can remember like being 5, and like I remember when I saw a black person for the first time. Like that's how rare it was in the part of the country that I was in, right? And for her, she's been just a girl of the people, all the people, her whole life, and I love that. I forget my larger point though. Oh,
Uh,
just that
I,
like
uh,
oh, it's not when people are people to you, you become a little less worried with paying attention to every perceived slight.
Yeah.
It's when you see them as such an other that you find yourself walking on eggshells all the time.
Oh yeah.
And so
100%.
there are times, and I hate to sound like a Ted Cruz here or something, where I think that that wokeness can be a symptom of deep, almost unconscious deep racism at times.
I think
Because
wokeness is racism.
yeah,
Because to be
well,
woke and to fight for other races is like still separation. And if you go far
exactly,
enough, like I saw getting so
exactly, Midas.
ridiculous in the news where they were like, oh, like white people were fighting for black only safe spaces on campus.
Yeah,
You
it's
just you
yeah.
just went full circle and went right back to segregation.
Right, you're so conscious, and you're so conscious of not being perceived as racist. It means that you're spending all your time worried about that, which means that you're probably racist.
Yeah,
Like,
if you
okay,
spend all that
my
time thinking about race, like I couldn't care less what race someone is. I mean, I'm
I
racist
grew
towards
up.
all races.
Well, you have that luxury, I guess.
Oh,
But my sister growing up is adopted, right?
mm,
And my parents were so hyper conscious of that and not wanting her to feel like she was other in the family. And by the way, we're all white people, so it's not like she was adopted from another country, another race. All white people, but still, it's like we were tall and dark haired, and she was like shorter and curvier and blonde and blue eyed. Like she looked different than us,
she was like a
ephemerally.
different flavor. Like you guys were vanilla, and she was like vanilla bean or something, right?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. So, but they were so hyper conscious of not wanting her to feel like an other because she was adopted that we were always walking on eggshells around the issue because she knew she was adopted. She knew her birth mother. It was an open adoption, even though we had her from the day she was born. I mean, I held her the day she was born. She was part of our, but it wasn't like it was a secret or anything. And yet, still, it was always walk on eggshells around this issue. And I realized later, and I've talked to her about this, like, it would have been much better if it had just been like, hey, um, you're adopted. We all know you're adopted, but you're our daughter, and like, uh, it's 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 not that it's neither here nor there, but we know we're not going to treat you differently, like you're fragile because you're adopted, right?
yeah.
Because it was you're trying to avoid creating this awareness of otherness, and in doing so, in the ways in which you step so carefully, you make the other hyper aware of their otherness.
Yeah,
And so,
most definitely.
and you make that other defined by their otherness. And as
Oh
I've used
yeah,
with
yeah,
the adoption example, this is actually a behavior that can transcend race and ethnicity and those type of things. But that's kind of where we're getting at, I think, with this at times the sort of inherent racism of wokeness. It's like if you spend all your time thinking about how you should treat somebody because they are black or Hispanic or gay or trans or whatever, then you are spending all of your time defining them by their otherness and not by their humanity. And that is hugely problematic.
yeah.
Well, and the only other 2 cents I could give you is chuck out all your preconceived notions of who that person needs to be. Um, like my wife um, is 13 years older than me. Had been divorced before we met. Um, all kinds of stuff that, like, in my preconceived idea of who I was going to marry,
Hmm.
uh, didn't exist. And if I had let any of my preconceived notions define who I was going to be want to be with, I would have missed out on like so much happiness and joy and meaning in life. But because sometimes people get into that trap of like, well, I can't get married until I've got a good job, and when we can't have a kid until we're financially stable, and like all this kind of stuff. And sure enough, like those are all excellent goals. But at the same time, follow your heart and your happiness if you meet that person and you know they're the one. Because
Okay.
if you wait to have all your ducks in a row, you might miss the train altogether. Like
Yeah, she might
honestly,
already be married by then.
we're so happy now and successful and everything, and like we were both like basically bankrupt and deeply in debt and like barely surviving when we met. But we fell in love and we're like, well, now we're gonna have a kid, and we're gonna somehow by hook or by crook find a place to live. And like we just were like, we're gonna do it because we love each other and we want to. And of course, there's a lot of luck, and I'm sure there's a lot of privilege, and there's all kinds of stuff. But what is it? John Lennon says, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." And if there's one sort of cliched piece of wisdom that has been very true in my life, it would be that. Um,
Life is what
so,
happens to you when you're busy making other plans.
right. So
I don't
don't let
understand
your.
that.
It means that, like, you get all these preconceived notions of what's going to be happy and fulfilling to you and all the boxes that you need to check. It's the same
Hmm.
basic point as this materialism wrapper thing we were talking about earlier. You're like, well, before I have a kid, I need to be making six figures, and I want to meet a girl that's roughly my age and my same ethnicity and my same education level, and et cetera, et cetera. And like, you have all these ideas in your head of who your soulmate should be, and she might have been standing next to you the whole time. But if she wasn't invisible because she didn't check your boxes, then you might see her.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. It's like if you're always waiting for your plans to come to fruition, all of a sudden you might find that you missed out on an infinite number of other wonderful plans. And now you're in a place where you can't do your original plans, feeling like a failure when in fact you were obsessed with the destination. I'm talking like Tony Robbins again, and not the journey, right? That's what life is. What
Oh
happens to
no,
you when
I,
you're
I
busy
see
making
that
other
definitely.
plans, you know?
When I was chasing one girl, I would like avoid all the other ones. Like my mind was like those horses with blinders on.
I was like that too, man. Because then you go, well, but because I really like this girl, and if I get with this other girl, and then the one that I like comes around, then I won't be able to get with her because this other girl will be in the way, and I don't want to hurt either of them, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Missed
first of all,
opportunity.
you're a decent guy. You're too good of a guy, um, and you're talking yourself in circles. I mean,
Yeah.
because
And then you
the
end
dudes
it's uh
the
it's the
dudes
it's the
that
chasing two rabbits thing, right?
Right.
Like yeah.
The dudes that you think of are, oh my God, he's so handsome, so charming, all the ladies love him, blah blah blah. Like I said, it's the numbers game, right? He would just sleep with that other girl and then go back to chasing his first choice, which is just
Yeah.
kind of a shitty thing to do. But on the other hand, the other reason women like him is he's not all fraught and invested in each interaction. And the reason he's not is because no one interaction has such high stakes, is such a high leverage moment as it is when you're interacting with the one girl. Where like then because it's the one, it's like you want it too bad, and you're all twitchy, and you're like awkward, and you're like can we blah, 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 blah. And
You
then the
want to do the
guy
right thing every single time, right? You want to make every move
right,
perfect.
right, right. And look, our society has advanced very much quicker than our biology. Um, that's the truth. So we have created a whole set of like moral values around societal advancement that our biology is not has not caught up to. And on a biological level, we're still basically cavemen. Like we have evolution takes a whole hell of a lot longer than the whatever it is 15,000 years since we walked out of the caves or off of the whatever, you know. So
Yeah, sometimes I'll look
we're
at a
still
vase and I'll be like, I could fuck that vase.
there you go.
Yeah.
But so women are still on like a biological pheromonal level, women and men are still attracted to the basic signals that existed for us when we were cavemen. So the dude that doesn't particularly care about any one girl and is perceived to get with lots of girls, oh well he's being the most successful at procreating. That's the implication. He
Mm.
therefore must be an alpha male and desirable and somebody I want to get with, and flattered that he wants to get with me when he can have anyone else.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
on the flip side, men are usually looking for youth and all the various signs of fertility. Not always. I mean, these are big generalizations, obviously,
Yeah.
but that's what like so when you walk up to the one girl who you're already deeply in love with and your emotional space is like, this is my one shot. On some level, even if she doesn't believe this in the forefront of her brain, in her like cave woman brain, which we all have, it's like, oh, this is your one shot. You must be not an alpha male. If this is your one shot to procreate, then you are a very unsuccessful procreator and therefore not a desirable mate.
Yeah. I think you
And not,
just I think you just solved the insecurities of every man.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think you just cured all insecurity right there.
Ha! Well, I just think that that's literally what's going. And not that, like, look, two awkward nerds can fall in love and it's beautiful, and I've been there, I've been that too. So not that these caveman symbols can't be signals can't be overcome and defeated to your great joy and happiness. Of course they can. However, just like the numbers game point, you're starting from way behind the ball relative to all your competition. If every girl is the one, and you're only going after the one, then you're it's just bad math. It doesn't mean you can't solve the block first, but
Yeah.
but it's going to take a whole hell of a lot of luck and probably like some kryptonite or some plutonium or something to harvest
It's
the
when you
power you're
start
going to need.
thinking with your mind instead of your heart that things tend to fall apart.
I mean, caveat for everything we've been talking about, right, is like money doesn't make you happy, blah blah blah. Like there is a point, and all of this other, there is a point at which it makes a huge difference, right? And I'm just going to sidetrack on money for a second. Like I remember when I first started in my career and I was assistant and I didn't even make enough money to eat 3 meals a day, barely pay the rent. Like when you get from that subsistence level to the next couple rungs up, like it really does make you a lot happier because you don't feel like you're about to starve to death or be homeless constantly, which is a huge amount of anxiety. But so all of these things we're talking about, totally aware of the privilege issue of like having enough money to be comfortable and not facing existential threats and blah 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 blah. I just want to get that out of the way because it's really obnoxious when people start talking about manifesting like the energy you put out there. If you're somebody who's fighting for survival on any level, you don't want to hear some asshole like me tell you about like the vibes you put out in the universe helping you to lead to success. You're like, no, it's
Mm.
because you're a white guy from a decent family, blah blah blah. Like, don't tell me it's because of the energy you put forth, right? That's obnoxious.
I see
But
that.
however, it you are if he is doing what you just described, then he is dwelling on failure. His entire life is about repeated failure because he's failed now however many times. And then he fails. And then he beats himself up and he tells himself what a loser he is and what a piece of shit he is. Like all the way until the next time when he fails again.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. He's definitely very
priv-
self-loathing because
right,
of that.
right. So privilege or not, you are never going to succeed and get what you want in life. And let's not make what you want into a particular thing. Let's just call it happiness, contentment, somehow being. If what you tell yourself and the universe and God and every is that you're a piece of shit failure, if you dwell on those negative emotions, and look, we all have them sometimes. I'm not one of those people that's like, just be in denial. If you just pretend everything's great, everything's totally great. But, you know, joy and rage and hatred are both like two sides of the same natural amphetamine. So people can get locked into the compelling stress cycle of self-loathing. It's like a degenerate gambler, right? They will tell you more stories about their biggest losses um, than they will about their biggest wins, and they are just as addicted to the giant losses as to the giant wins, which is why they're degenerate gambler because it's the same basic chemical experience. Like feeling like you're falling off a building and you're about to die is basically the same chemical experience as going like, "Oh my god, I just won $1 million." Like the stakes are your whole life in that moment, right?
There's a Kanye lyric like that. It's like um I thought about killing you, something, and it's like you would only want to kill someone you love so much because love and hate are also like the same. Like it's like
right,
the two sides of the same coin.
right. So it's the same
Yeah.
with yourself. It's the same. So if he is locked into this self-loathing and sense of being a failure, that is what he will be. Like,
Yeah, I can see
you
that.
know, like you just can't. Because by the way, once he puts that much, because we build ourselves, we tell ourselves who we are. Once he puts that much energy into like I'm a piece of shit and I'm a failure, let's say he somehow gets into the university. So what?
Then
He
what?
already
Yeah,
knows he's a piece of shit and a failure, and if that doesn't make him happy, it's going to be his fault.
he's gonna find
The
something else to,
right, right,
put the rest of his life on.
right. This university was all I needed to be happy. And if I'm not happy, it's not because the university wasn't what I needed. It's because I'm the piece of shit I always knew I was, and I'm such a piece of shit that I can't even capitalize on finally getting what I've always wanted.
I feel that way
It,
with shoes.
yeah.
Like you want a pair of shoes for so long, and you're like, you see like the fit pics online, like, oh, like if I just get this pair of shoes, my outfits are gonna go crazy. I'm gonna have like it's like swag unlimited, and then you
hmm
get them, and then you're like, I'm still the same guy I was before. That's why I stopped buying
Yeah,
like
yeah,
name branded clothing as a whole.
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm still this like,
That's
regardless of what I'm wearing, I'm still the same
yeah.
retard. Like I'm just
I
wearing different
will
shoes.
say though, that if you are going out specifically to attract the other sex, I recommend wearing slick shoes and dressing well. But shoes especially. You will women notice that about each other and men. I'm sure not every woman, don't get me with that. Than just about any single other thing. So, I will tell you that your love of slick sneakers is legit, man. If you've got dirty shoes, you ain't taking her home. Not
I,
unless
I
she already likes you and you've been working on it for years and she doesn't care about it anymore. If your
I've
shoes suck, you're fucked.
I've been
So
so
that's the
like into fashion like throughout high school, and it started off with like the big name brand stuff like Gucci, Louis Vuitton, everything, and then it got into more specific stuff that people like really wouldn't know. But what I've noticed is that when you get to the top of fashion, like the whole cycle, once you get to
it's
the
just
top
a
of it,
white tee again. Yeah.
it, it
Is that what
is
you
it
said?
is just another white t-shirt and jeans and looking plain and simple. The dude who doesn't care about fashion at all, and the guy who buys from the most exclusive and expensive brands in the world, like Brioni and Loro Piana, they look the
Yeah.
same. Maybe
Yeah.
just like the t-shirt is fitted a little better or something, but it's the same
So,
thing.
right. Well, one thing about super high fashion, right, is in America, generally, I mean, we can talk about generations and the people that like to floss on Instagram or something, but like announcing your wealth is generally considered in bad taste. And especially if you're like a blue blood person, then it's in really bad taste. You meet the richest people that have been the richest for the longest, and they would never. They do everything they can to play it down. I mean, except for the fact that they
Yeah,
might live in a fucking palace and be like playing pole. So in some ways, not. But you know what I
I
mean.
know a dude
So
just like that.
right, right.
Yeah.
So what the super expensive brands that still look like an Old Navy T-shirt, what they are is a low-key calling card because somebody else who can afford that brand will recognize it. I won't. I won't be able to tell the difference from 10 feet away between the Old Navy and the whatever name you just said. But somebody who's in the same like social sphere and wealth class as the person wearing that, um, they will see it's like, oh, you're in the club too. I can relax around you. I don't have to spend all my
Hmm.
time pretending like I'm not a rich guy. I can actually tell you that I just took the private jet to the Virgin Islands and not feel like an asshole. And that's one thing I had to figure out going to Yale with so many close friends that were a lot wealthier than me is it's like, look, everybody wants to just relax and talk about their lives. And one of the reasons that really rich people gravitate towards other really rich people, it's not just social pressures and their parents want them to marry and blah, 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 whatever. It's that, like, if what you're actually doing is taking the private jet to the Virgin Islands and you're hanging out with your blue collar jumped up friends, you sound like a fucking asshole talking about your life all the time. And who likes to feel like an asshole all the time? So if you hang out with other rich people, then you can just relax and be yourself, which is what every human being wants and what you ought to be able. Everybody just basically should be entitled to do that.
Yeah, it's
And so,
comfort and familiarity. It's a shared
yeah,
experience that traces all the way back to, racism and comedy.
yeah, yeah.
It's all
If you
just a
want to,
shared
yeah,
experience.
right. And if you
Yeah.
want to have friends from every social circle, and I've got friends from like basically street level drug dealer type of friends, although maybe not literally drug dealers, but maybe they were, all the way to, whatever, wealthy, powerful, blah, blah, blah. You got to get that chip off your shoulder fast. Like, and
Yeah, that's
just
something that
let people be themselves. Like, and that's kind of ties into the wokeness thing too, because it's like when you're all mad about somebody in their private jet, you're thinking like, oh well, you're wasting so much money, and how many people could you feed in this other country, and what about global warming, and blah, 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 and you're just like hating on everything and telling yourself that it makes you more virtuous. It's
yeah.
this, and you gotta lay that down, or you'll never make genuine connections with anyone. You know?
No, I faced that similar problem when I first came to the States. And like a lot of the people I was going to university with had never left their country or their state or some like even their like area of city or whatever. And it's like I felt like the asshole talking about like, oh, when I was living here, when I was living there. And then I had to
Right.
like really tone it down. Basically, I just like wouldn't say anything.
And yeah, but you don't deserve to feel like an asshole for just talking about your life. And then you have to tone it. Then you tone it down, and you don't say anything. And now you're just like the quiet, nerdy Asian kid, right? So you can't win.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't win no matter what you do. So it's just like fuck it, just say whatever because you're about to die
Yeah.
in 80 years anyways.
And that's the secret to all of this, from like getting the ladies to being happy to like being genuine and not living your life by a bunch of made up rules that have nothing to do with anything. It's all just be confident in who you are. Now that's
Yeah.
hard to do. It's hard for all of us. I haven't cracked that, man. I am full of anxieties and self-hatreds and all kinds of stuff. Like it's the human condition. We're all like this. But when you have an opportunity to release yourself from those things, when they come along in your days, you got to take them. You
Oh
know
yeah.
that, and I think that's what people. It's like somebody who, say a guy, every girlfriend he's ever had cheats on him, and then he's like, well, women just aren't faithful. That's the conclusion he draws, right? And then after a certain amount of time in your life, you're gonna hit a point where like you would rather get cheated on again than have your what has now become an ideology for 40 years be proven wrong, and oh my god, I wasted my life believing this thing. It's better to continue to suffer than to admit how much time you wasted being wrong. And
It's a
that's what you don't.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. That's what you
Yeah.
don't want to, and that's what you don't want to get trapped into, because that's like your friend applying for the. If he stopped applying every semester, he would have to confront the fact that like he shouldn't have been doing it all along, and all of this beating up of himself that he does, and all of this self hatred, and all of this you're a loser, and blah blah blah, and blaming this and that. It was all just wasted time, and sometimes that is scarier than actually getting what you want or doing what you need to.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah,
And I'm speaking from personal experience here, so
yeah.
you
I
know,
can live with mistakes. I mean, I'm like a lightning rod for bad decisions. But
gosh,
uh, I would I would rather have those mistakes made been made than live with the regret of what if. Because I still have some what ifs, and those still like eat at me when I'm trying to go to bed sometimes and stuff.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, for sure, dude, for sure.
yeah.